Hi guys, is Kaveh Solhekol the real hero of the week? In this clip where he was speaking on Sky Sports, he exposed the rank hypocrisy being demonstrated not just by the BBC when it came to its request that Gary Lineker stop expressing political opinions on his own Twitter account, but why is it people like Jeremy Clarkson and Andrew Neil not being asked to do the same thing? Have a listen to what Kaveh had to say.
But a lot of people are looking at this and saying, how come Andrew Neil, one of the most high-profile political journalists and interviewers on the BBC for many, many years, how come he is allowed to be the chairman of a right-wing magazine, The Spectator? How come he is allowed to express political opinions on Twitter as much as he wants? How come the chairman of the BBC, Richard Sharp, the chairman, is somebody who donated £400,000 to the Conservative Party? Someone who has helped arrange an £800,000 loan for the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. How come Robbie Gibb, or as we have to call him, Sir Robbie Gibb, who used to be the communications director for the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, how come he's on the BBC board at the moment? Why is Alan Sugar allowed to say what he wants on Twitter about political matters? What about Jeremy Clarkson? He's got a column in The Sun. He's got a column in the Sunday Times. He was on the BBC. He frequently expressed political opinions which many people think are extreme on social media. And why is the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, the Director General? He used to be the Deputy Chairman of the Hammersmith and Fulham Conservative Party. He's a man who's stood as a candidate in local elections for the Conservative Party. So why is all this allowed, yet Gary Lineker is not allowed to make a fairly innocuous comment, which many, many people would agree with, about a policy that has been condemned by the United Nations and also by many human rights groups? And this is the same Gary Lineker who's been allowed on the BBC to criticise the human rights record of Qatar. Why is he not allowed to criticise the human rights record of the country he lives in?
Wow. And he's completely correct. Why is it that Gary Lineker can criticise the human rights record of Qatar, but not the human rights record of the United Kingdom? Why is it people like Andrew Neil can have a number of jobs and be extremely political in his discussions and his statements on social media, for example, and still hold a job with the BBC? Jeremy Clarkson, another one. And Lord Sugar, Alan Sugar as well. How is it that these people are able to make controversial comments on social media and there's no backlash? Because they're towing the Tory party line, that's why. The government put people in positions of power within the BBC, and those people maintain the position that the government are doing the right thing. That's what it's about. When it comes to politics, look, and I think the BBC does wonderful programming, does wonderful work, but when it comes to politics, and we've seen this before, how many times have people from very shady right-wing organisations been invited onto the BBC, and there's no explanation of who these people are or who funds them? And now you have Gary Lineker criticising the government and being told by the BBC, you need to step back. You need to stop, using your platform to talk about issues like this. If Gary Lineker had been saying the government is doing a great job, do you think the BBC would have criticised him? Of course not. So on an issue like this, human rights, the UN is on the same side as Gary Lineker. Human rights organisations are on the same side as Gary Lineker. But he's the one who's making trouble. He's the one who's problematic. As we've seen with the current chair of the BBC. He donated to the Conservative Party. Boris Johnson made sure that he became the chairman, or is it chairman or director? I don't remember, but it's one of the senior people in the BBC. And he's there to make sure that the government don't get criticised. or whatever criticism there is of the government, it's limited. Can't get away with complete and 100% propaganda, but they would love to, but you can't do that. Not yet, anyway. But when it comes to this policy, the narrative is the government are doing the right thing. Yes, there is some criticism, but it's from fringe elements. But of course, the hypocrisy of very senior people, Andrew Neil, working for the right-wing Spectator, and no criticism of that, no demanding of him to step aside and say, no, you can't actually do this. You have to be neutral or impartial. Ridiculous. But it's great that there are people calling this out, and it has to be called out. And I hope that the BBC are going to do a U-turn here and put Gary Lineker back in place. That's where he should be. He should be in Match of the Day. His opinions on social media are either, like Andrew Neil and others, separate, because if you're going to apply these rules to, or this narrative to Gary Lineker, it has to be applied to Andrew Neil, Alan Sugar and Jeremy Clarkson too. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.